Good morning. The Lord be with you. We have a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner going out at daybreak to hire workers for his vineyard. He made an agreement with the workers for 1 denarius a day and sent them to his vineyard. Going out at about the 3rd hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You go to my vineyard too, and I will give you a fair wage.' So they went. At about the 6th hour, and again at the 9th hour, he went out and did the same. Then at about the 11th hour, he went out and found more men standing around, and he said to them, 'Why have you been standing here idle all day?' 'Because no one has hired us,' they answered. He said to them, 'You go into my vineyard too.' In the evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his bailiff, 'Call the workers and pay them their wages, starting with the last arrivals and ending with the first.' So those who were hired at about the 11th hour came forward and received 1 denarius each. They took it, when the first came, they expected to get more, but they too received 1 denarius each. They took it, but grumbled at the landowner. 'The men who came last,' they said, 'have done only 1 hour, and you have treated them the same as us, though we have done a heavy day's work in all the heat.' He answered one of them and said, 'My friend, I am not being unjust to you. Did we not agree on 1 denarius? Take your earnings and go. I choose to pay the last comer as much as I pay you. Have I no right to do with what I like with my own? Why be envious because I am generous? Thus the last will be first, and the first last.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. In 1965, Father Eugene Kuskali, a missionary of the Sacred Heart, published a book he titled "The Kindness of God," in which he expressed a fresh look at theology on the theme running through the psalm we had as part of our readings today, Psalm 144, where we hear words such as, "The Lord is kind and full of compassion, slow to anger, abounding in love. How good is the Lord to all, compassionate to all his creatures." At the time, I was newly ordained, after struggling for 4 years with lectures in Latin on various aspects of theology, which I barely understood. The book became a revelation, not only because it was written in accessible English, but more importantly, because it made plain common sense of all that I had struggled with in Rome. I still have a copy of that book on my shelf and pull it out from time to time to help me with a homily that needs a bit more insight than I can give it. Today's parable of the workers in the vineyard, who at the end of the day are all paid the same wage of 1 denarius each, even though some had worked hard all day long, while others had worked for only 1 hour, is a case in point. What is Jesus getting at in this parable? Is it about justice, or is there some other principle in play? The answer lies in the opening words of this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner going out at daybreak. It is God who is the landowner, and it is God who goes out again and again to invite more laborers into his vineyard. While with the first group he agrees to pay them a denarius a day, he doesn't bargain with those who come later. All he assures them of is that he will pay them a fair wage, and they go off happily to his vineyard. What happens next has a close relationship to our social justice system. The current pandemic has thrown many people out of work, and to help them, the government has stepped in with the Job Seeker and Job Keeper Assistance Scheme. It is as if the owner of the vineyard has a similar social conscience who recognizes that each of his laborers really needs a full day's pay in order to feed his family, pay the rent, and have some coins left over for other necessities like clothing or footwear. Moreover, he is also aware that in all likelihood they had a valid reason why they had not been hired earlier. Some could have been caught up with things at home, such as 6 children needing attention first, a pregnant wife who could not be left alone, an aged parent to take care of. They could have been promised a job elsewhere that did not come off, or they were the leftovers who no one really wanted, for they were the lame and crippled, the sick and slightly mad. Each one of them, or one of these, would not be standing around simply because they didn't care whether they had work that day or not. So he hired them all. In listening to this parable, it is useful to reflect that the first workers on the job had the assurance of a full day's pay. They could work happily that day in the full knowledge that there would be food on the table that evening, a roof over their heads, and a family satisfied with the ability to care for them. The others would all have done their work gratefully, but also with a degree of anxiety about how much they would receive and for how far that might carry them in their overall needs. When you think about it, which of these workers carried the greater burden? God knew, but do we? On a more spiritual level, the parable is about the invitation we have received to be part of God's kingdom. Does it matter when that invitation came to us? Should we be jealous of those who have taken the best things of life and scrape in at the door at the last moment? Or should we be happy that the promise of a place in God's kingdom is already ours, together with the assurance of support every inch of the way through the sacraments, especially the Eucharist, and the support of each other as fellow followers of Christ? What is the song which we sing? A song of envy or a song of joy? May you too grow in your knowledge and love of the kindness of God. Thank you.